Okay, well, I hope, sorry, normally I would be the first to present, but I'm not. It was a bit of a trying day today, so hopefully everything is here and everything's going to work out okay. The sky this month, where are we? So we're heading towards Samhain. I thought rather than talking a little bit about, dates and times and so on, I would just sort of note that October 31st is a special day because it's halfway between the equinox and the solstice. And there's a bunch of other days, including from Celtic lore. So that's Samhain, and we've got Imbolc and Beltane and Lugnasad in August. and it's interesting because you might recognize some of these dates as obviously Halloween, October 31st. February 1st is not only my birthday, but it's also one day before Groundhog Day. May 1st is May Day. And for some reason, August 1st is the long bank holiday weekend. It doesn't have a real Celtic tradition behind it. But all of those dates that represent the midpoints between the equinoxes and solstices have been celebrated for a long, long time as important dates in the turning of the year. So we're kind of, halfway between the equinox and the solstice when we get to October 31st, and then we further subdivide it into these other in-between points, and I believe that the pagans just had a really good sense of, okay, well, it's probably time for another party. It's been 6 weeks. So anyway, that's where we are. So in where we are in terms of the solstice and so forth is that we are, we're seeing astronomical twilight now quite long, from 8 o'clock through to almost 6 o'clock in the morning, and we're losing about 2 minutes of daylight a day. It'll slow down as we get closer to December and almost come to a complete halt right around the solstice. This is prime time, so we're getting to the point where things are getting dark early enough to really do things with, and yet it's not yet so cold that it's difficult to get out and difficult to use your equipment. So this is good times, and good times to be enjoyed. In terms of the big picture, so I always like to start out with this picture here from moonwise.co.uk, because they do a very good job of showing off the entire night sky as you sort of see it going from left to right. So I'm just going to, starting here. So this is the sky, the sun as it sets, and the planets along the ecliptic are shown here, essentially in a straight line, and you can sort of see where everything is. So what we notice is we've got the inferior planets hanging out around the sun, Saturn, Jupiter near the sun, Neptune, and the full moon, which is near mid-month, right, showing up here. Then we've got a big bit of a pause through the morning sky before Mars eventually shows up here in the morning sky. So that's roughly where everything is. And you can see at this time of year we've got some of our key constellations, the Great Square of Pegasus. Taurus is coming up around the middle of the night. Orion's starting to become more accessible. And we still have a lot of the summer constellations in view. As you probably all know, we recently had the annual Planetary Awards, which everybody here, I think, saw on TV. There wasn't a lot of surprises. The largest planet award, again, went to Jupiter. That's 4,485,480,000, lots of consecutive wins. Jupiter's really been knocking that out of the park. Most impressive rings, Saturn also, 7 million impressive consecutive wins for them. And of course, we also have the largest number of moons, Jupiter with 79, but wait for it, no, Saturn has just come in with 82. So, something new in the Planetary Awards. So, what's interesting, I read this article from Nicole Montalero. Scientists have discovered a whole new batch of moons around Saturn, which has lifted it into first place. This is expected to potentially be temporary because the nature of these surveys is they're finding 1 to 5 kilometer moons in deep space figuring out their orbit and figuring out that they're actually captured by Saturn's gravity. There are interesting alignments being found there because of planetary alignments. There's an Inuit group which is following one sort of set of orbital paths, and there's some other ones. I think, though, that Saturn's award may be short-lived because if you think about it, Saturn is twice as far away from the Sun as Jupiter, so the relative space that you're looking at to find moons for Saturn is roughly here. The relative space you need to look to find the same number of moons for Jupiter is like this much bigger. So I suspect that Jupiter might just jump out in front again. So we'll find out at the next Planetary Awards show as it comes up. So just recapping a little bit in terms of what we've got with planets this month coming up. Jupiter is heading out. I saw it tonight on my way out from home. It's there. You can get a telescope on it kind of right at sunset, but it will be dropping very quickly over the next few weeks. So I'd say it's almost gone. Certainly it's going to be in the muck very soon. Saturn is following it directly, and it'll be almost gone soon. Neptune is kind of in its prime position. It's at near opposition. It's as good as it gets. It's a very small but very blue planet, so if you can get a telescope on it with relatively high magnification, you can easily pick it out if you're looking in the right spot. And Uranus is up there as well. It's rising a bit later than Neptune now, and what I'm seeing is that Uranus on its inside track, its orbit's about 80-something years. Neptune's about 170. What I've been noticing over the past few years is that they've been really starting to show some distance now between the two planets. It wasn't that long ago, about 10, 12 years ago, that they are actually really almost one on top of another, and there was a close pass of Uranus and Neptune. Now we're seeing Uranus really moving into a different part of the sky. So it's kind of doing the same kind of behavior that we're used to seeing from Saturn and Jupiter, only, you know, in slow motion. Venus is an evening object, twice as evening as I was expecting, and Mars and Mercury pretty well lost in the solar glare, and we'll talk a bit more about Mercury in a minute. Moon phases this month. We've got full moon coming up around the Thanksgiving weekend, so that's next weekend. Good observing weekends will be around between the 21st and 27th. There's a full moon, or our last, I believe, supervised weekend at the CAO is the end of this month. So put that in your calendar. Good opportunity, hopefully, for some observing. And then before our next meeting, we'll have the first quarter. Now, I mentioned Mercury because in my sky this month, not the next sky this month, but in my sky this month, we have a transit of Mercury coming up on Monday, November 11th. That's 2 days before the next meeting. So we'll probably be hearing lots and lots about this over the next month. I expect this to be something of an observing event. There'll probably be some activities. I'm sure Ralph's got some ideas about that, and keep your eyes peeled on the center chat rooms and so forth to find out more about that. So this is the specifics of Toronto's experience here. So I've got a couple of things here. So one is, you know, the azimuth direction. So if you have any trouble figuring out where the sun is, right, you can use a compass, and you can use this to identify exactly where the sun is in the sky. Hopefully not too many of us have trouble with that, but of course you're going to be using safe solar filtering. But the key thing here is just the sun's altitude. So this is another month from now. The sun is starting to get pretty low in the sky, so you can see even heading right towards local noon, the sun's only up at 27 degrees. So when you're planning for this, you got to be thinking, okay, that sun's going to be tracking low, so you're going to need a good horizon to the south in order to see this event. The other thing is, if you want to see transit start, you have to do some really good preparation, because the transit start is when the sun is only at 4 degrees. So 4 degrees is like roughly, you know, a couple of, you know, finger widths over the horizon when held at arm's length. So that's really close to the horizon. Not quite as close to the horizon as a transit of Venus was back in 2004, but I think you're going to need a similar, if you want to catch the transit starting, you're going to need a similar really, really perfect horizon, probably over water, to see it. And the transit, the partial to full transit takes about a minute to happen, so you need to really have eyes on it and be ready to go at that time. There's a couple of marks here. There's the sort of mid-transit is when it's nearest the center of the sun, and the full transit will end, and the partial transit, it moves right off the sun's face just after 1 in the afternoon. So from a public, that's the word I'm looking for, outreach perspective, this is an interesting opportunity to bring your solar scope to work and wander out into the parking lot around 11:30 and say, hey, come on out and check out the transit of Venus / Mercury, sorry. You know, you would need relatively high magnification too. That's the other thing to point out. Mercury is really small. It's further away than Venus. It's smaller than Venus. So if you're looking for, like, Venus really looked like somebody took a bullet hole out of the sun. Mercury, you really need to kind of keep an eye for it and close. This really excellent simulation from timeanddate.com shows what the relative size of Mercury versus the sun will be. You will be missing those helpful pointers in your scope, so it's going to be that small. And I don't know, currently the sun's very quiet, so there's not a lot of sunspots going on, so there might not be much else to focus on, so you will need a chance to look at it. And I'm just going to see if I can launch do we have internet access on this computer? Yeah. Great. I'm going to see if I can get, whoops, the animation to run that I took this picture from here. Whoops. Back. And it would have been a hot link if I'd been better. Hang on a second. I'm just going to bounce out of here. Grab that link. Copy. Switcheroo. What's that? Chrome may be running on the bottom. Okay, there's a browser. Let's see. Okay. Okay, let's, oops, did I? There we go. Okay, good. Nice, okay, great. So this is an animation here, I'll just start it again, of the transit sort of essentially in progress here. So there it goes. So you can see how it's following along the sun. So it kind of looks like it's starting off on a straight line like this, but what's interesting is it's showing you sort of the orientation. So as the sun sort of twists its way through the sky, the path of Mercury sort of peels off towards the edge like this. That's the midpoint, that's the closest it gets, and it gets very close to the middle of the sun for this transit. And then it keeps on trucking and trucking and trucking, and will eventually make its way right off the sun. So, and you can see here the sun's altitude peaks at 29 degrees. So that's sort of our best one there. I'll just run it one more time. Oh, it'll run itself one more time. There it goes. And it's just highlighting it's pausing at the moments there. Now, one thing that's interesting about these transit always is if there's any prominences or anything else like that going on at the edge of the sun, sometimes you can get really lucky and catch the silhouette of the planet against a prominence before it actually hits the edge of the sun if you have a hydrogen alpha scope. So that, I don't know if many members have that equipment or have that ambition, but that's something that people might be able to take advantage of. Or at least we should see some of that on the interwebs after the event. So that's a preview of the transit of Mercury, courtesy of dateandtime.com. A very useful site. I find they've got lots of good stuff there. All right, where is my cursor? Moving right back to our slideshow. And skipping ahead. Okay, so we had a quick look at the transit of Mercury. Now, a little bit of fun facts. Transits of Mercury always occur either around May 8th or November 10th, And if you remember your basic eclipses, a transit occurs when the elliptical path of planet A intersects the elliptical path of planet B. There's two places, one where the planet appears to be coming up and one where it appears to be coming down. So May 8th is the ascending node, May 10th is the descending mode, and because Mercury goes around the Sun way faster than Venus does, there's a lot more opportunities for transits. And so the lineup occurs approximately every 4, 6, 7, 13, 33, 46, 171, or 217 years. And the geometry of Mercury transits is such that every 217 years, the transit path follows almost exactly the same path. So there's essentially sort of a canon of transits where the transit will go through the northern hemisphere, go through the southern hemisphere, and so on. So every 217 years, it lines up exactly the same way, and the next transit along that will look exactly like the one in November will be in many, many years from now. But the next transit in the of any kind for Mercury is also in November, and it's 2032. So for a lot of us, this opportunity may be like we had one, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago, relatively recent. So this next one is one of these integer ones where it's a significant number of years away. So this is one of those 13-year gaps that happen. So all of that is excellent and very interesting, but it's November, it's Toronto, it's probably going to be clouded out. So anyway, I'm glad I told you all about that. We can all appreciate it. In terms of what's going on in the sky, we're heading into the water constellations. So we've got Pisces, a fish, Cetus, a whale, Aquarius has water jugs, Capricornus is a sea goat, and we've got the southern fish because the northern fish was feeling lonely. We've even got Delphinus up there, which isn't really part of the water constellations, but is a dolphin. The horse is presumably splashing in the waves there, and it's part of some kind of a commercial or something like that. Anyway, what's interesting about the water constellations is that this is absolutely a pause in the sense that there's very little going on in the way of deep sky objects at this time of year. And what we're looking at when we're looking south in the fall is we're looking at what they call the Messier hole. So every year there's an opportunity for a Messier marathon where you can see all of the Messier objects in one night. And the reason for that is that when the sun moves its way along the ecliptic and ends up in this area with the water constellations, there's actually no Messier objects around there for the sun to wash out. So that creates the opportunity for the Messier marathon. So when you're casting around in the fall trying to find something interesting to view, take heart. The Messier marathon is coming in just about 6 months' time. In terms of targets, so the key constellations that have got some good things, Pegasus obviously is your pointer to Andromeda, the Andromeda galaxy. Taurus, we have the Hyades cluster, and Perseus is in the north now, high enough to see the double cluster, the Alpha Persei Association. Cassiopeia has a nice selection of galaxies and other things around it. And not to give up completely on the summer objects, the summer triangle is still visible in the west. As the nights get longer at this time of year, the apparent movement of the stars seems to sort of slow down. So the sun is setting faster while the stars are moving in their paths, so we've got a little bit more time to see those southern objects, and we don't have to give up completely on the summer triangle actually until December. In terms of other events to see, besides the usual things, we've got a couple of specials here. There's a comet that might be visible and an occultation I'd like to tell you about on October 30th. So the first one to tell you about is Comet Africano. So this one here, this is a finder chart taken as of Monday night. So this is from Toronto. And what's interesting about this is that this is was right around Neptune here. So if you remember from my earlier sky chart, that's right in this, Neptune is right now at opposition. So it's relatively in the middle of the southern sky at midnight, and so, and available. Now Africano is heading towards the southern sky. So this is kind of like a target of opportunity. If you wait until the moon is out of the way, it will be gone. And it was, you know, at least in terms of this area here, it was roughly, you know, near Neptune, which would have given you something there. I've got a web link, web reference here. We'll have a look at that afterwards, just to see if we can find out where it is tonight, in case anybody wants to go and have a look. But it seems to be about the only good comet that's roughly, and it's roughly about 10th magnitude. So it's, you need a relatively good telescope to pull that out. On an easier note, we have an upcoming occultation, which I would like to invite everybody to, because this one is actually pretty good. We've got a 6th magnitude star, which is really pretty bright. Typically, we're dealing with 8th, 9th, 10th magnitude stars. 6th magnitude is like, this is like Florida. This is warm and sunny. And it's actually even easier. Like, it's actually occulting a Hipparcos catalog star. So Hipparcos catalog stars are easy to find in your planetarium program too, because they're usually well cross-referenced. Every planetarium program I've ever seen has generally got the Hipparcos catalog loaded. So you can just punch in that number 44575 and find the target star very easily. Elevation's 39 degrees, which is about halfway up the sky. The duration is up to 2.5 seconds, and it's a 9 magnitude drop, which means it's basically going to go completely poof. There's only one drawback in all of this goodness, which is that it's at 3:30 in the morning on a work night. But you can see the path here. It goes through, pretty well runs right over Barrie. Hey Blake, there, FYI. The Carr Observatory is near the northern path. A lot of our accessible areas here are right on, this is like Forks of the Credit area here, near Minto and so forth. So this is potentially very observable. There's already 3 observers signed up for it on Occult Watch. I expect we'll see a lot more, because this is kind of going over prime area here. And one thing to watch out for if it's changing, is that the path can always shift a little bit. So this is based on the most recent astrometry of the asteroid and of the star. And so while they're getting more, the error bars get tighter, there might be some final changes and move it a little bit either way. Anyway, if you have the ambition, this would be visible in your eyepiece, easy to find, and it could just disappear on you if you're in the right spot at the right time. Other targets, I think I mentioned a lot of these. One thing that is kind of cool at this time of year, Algol is in good viewing aspect. Near the new moon, we've got 2 sort of minimum opportunities. So Algol, for those of you who haven't heard of it before, it's an eclipsing binary star that goes on a regular pattern about every 2 and a bit days. And what happens is it's a double star system, and a dimmer star passes in front of a brighter star, and the whole system drops in brightness for about 3 hours. So it's quite a noticeable drop in terms of its brightness, and it was something that even ancient people noticed a long, long time ago, because it's close to other stars that are relatively bright. So there's 2 opportunities coming up at the end of October where that minimum is going to be in prime observing time. So those are good opportunities to make a note and to see if you can go out there and compare and contrast Algol with its minimum versus maximum. And when you're looking for it, Algol is here Beta Persei, and it's essentially, this is Perseus here. Merak is the brightest star in the middle. This is the Alpha Persei association, and you're going to be able to compare Algol. At its brightest is going to be brighter than these 2 stars here, and at its dimmest it goes down to 4th magnitude roughly. So it becomes noticeably less bright than these ones here. So something to look for. ISS spotting happening as usual. This month we'll have some evening passes until October 11th. In fact, there was a great one tonight at about 10 minutes to 7 before the meeting. So I was thinking, oh great, I can highlight this great pass, but then everybody will already be in this room by the time that great pass happens. So that's not very useful to anyone. But then morning passes will resume on October 22nd, so we have a bit of a break until between October 11th and 22nd. The best one I could see for the month coming is October 26th, around 7 a.m., 82 degrees up, which means it'll go pretty well straight overhead as seen from Toronto. So, and it'll be commensurately bright at that time. So that's something else to look forward to. So that's what I've got for everyone tonight. Pause and ask if there's any questions, or even better, comments, anything I've missed, anything else that anyone else would like to highlight. Oops, not that. Yes, sir, Andrew. Adrian, sorry.
The occultation of, the transit of Mercury across the sun, how long was it going to last?
It's going from 7 in the morning. We're actually seeing it at its beginning. We actually see the whole transit from here until 1 in the afternoon. So that makes it out about 6 hours. We're just on the edge. If we were a little bit further east, like New York City or Newfoundland, we'd have a better view. We'd have it well up when the transit started, and it would still be up when it's there. But we're, all things considered, not bad. Yes, sir, Tom.
One suggestion for observing site for the Mercury transit would be the same beach that we used to observe a dawn solar eclipse many years ago. There's a parking lot at Woodbine Beach right by the water's edge, which would give you a view right at just after dawn, all the way through the entire transit.
Nice. Okay, so Woodbine Beach is a good potential observing site. And with that direction, you can scout it out in advance and make sure that the sun's going to come up in a good spot. I'm assuming that you're going to be watching, right? Mercury man? Any other questions or comments? Once, going twice. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, and happy observing.